Hey everyone, it's Alicia Atout back with our very first Knotfest Heavy Conversations of the year. Now, I know that Larry David would say that I am way past the cutoff point, but I do have to say a very happy new year to everyone who's watching, those listening, and of course to today's panel of Daniel Dekay and Ryan J. Downey. And let me tell you, the heavy metal universe is kicking this year off with a bang. But before we actually get into it, how is 2023 been for you two?
I love Larry David as much as you do. And I think it's acceptable as long as it's still January and you haven't actually seen the person this year yet. So
Okay,
I,
so
I
you
think
don't
I think
agree with
we're
the seventh
within our rights.
cutoff?
Yeah, we can do it.
I mean, the seventh cutoff, really, I think you're supposed to apply it to like people who are regularly in your life. If you see a
Right.
friend on the 9th or the 12th and it's the first time, like I feel like you can give them a happy new year. Because if you don't, maybe they're gonna think you're a dick.
That's true, and we don't want to come off as dicks. I mean, most of the time, right?
There's a time
Better
and a
safe
place
than
for
sorry.
everything.
There's a time and a place. Well, as I had mentioned, the year has only just started, but the festival announcements are coming in heavy, both in quantity and, of course, quality. And now we're getting to see a lot of artists from the heavy metal genre, not only performing at some of them, but also a lot of mainstream festivals, which is super cool to see. And not only that, though, but also being listed as headliners, which is something that we haven't seen a lot of in the past. And a perfect example of that is seeing Foo Fighters, Paramore, Knocked Loose, along with AFI making it to Bonnaroo. So do we love to see it, panel? Let's start with you, Dekay.
I have, no qualms with heavier bands or bands from our world being on things like Bonnaroo, which like historically I think was supposed to be a hippie festival when it first started, but it's kind of like how all these festivals go. They start very niche and specialized and then kind of open up to the broader spectrum of music. Personally have no issues with it, but what I will contribute is that when I want to see the bands that I like, the heavier bands, I don't go to Bonnaroo for it. I go to more specialty festivals and stuff that's, every band on the bill is geared towards my taste, not just one or two headliners. And then I'm like, bumbling around, not knowing what to do with the rest of my time.
Mm-hmm. And Downey, do you kind of see it the same way?
Yeah, I think that festivals that are more suited to a particular genre environment tend to be a better place to see a lot of different kinds of bands, depending on what your taste is. Interesting thing about Bonnaroo is that I don't know if you guys know this, but I'm kind of a fan of this band Metallica. And they actually played Bonnaroo on Death Magnetic in 2008. And I was looking at an article, and this also, it's like, I mean, obviously Metallica is not only the biggest metal band of all time, arguably, one of the bigger recording acts in history, period, up there with your Michael Jacksons and Garth Brooks and so on. And back in 2008, Esquire ran an article, 5 reasons why Metallica will doom Bonnaroo forever. If you like the Bonnaroo Music Festival, don't read this story. As history shows, Metallica ruins everything. Right. Bonnaroo was nice knowing you. Number 1, they killed Lollapalooza. It's like, I saw Metallica on Lollapalooza. That was like a big deal. Metal fans were upset that they were playing an alternative festival, and alternative fans were upset that a metal band was headlining their festival. That was in the 90s, and I'm pretty sure Lollapalooza still exists and is like still a thing and doing fine. So, I mean, the idea that like putting this in a festival or that in a festival is going to kill it or hurt it at all, I think is silly nonsense. So, I think it's a victory for these bands when they get an opportunity to play in front of these big crowds. Coachella has always been really smart and diverse about that. They always have their like 3 or 4, oddball, super extreme bands there. And, I like to think that maybe some of these bands are gateway drugs, right? Where someone's at the festival just because it's a festival, or they're there for the pop acts or whatever. And then there's that one heavy band that blows their minds and is the craziest, heaviest thing they've ever seen or heard, and it gets them interested. So, I mean, I think it's ultimately a net positive. But I'm like Dekay. If I'm really excited to go see a band, I'm not necessarily going to go to one of those festivals to do it.
It's just like kind of, it's obviously always exciting. Like a band like Metallica, like I'm completely indifferent about what festivals they're playing on, because that's, they're their own rule book. They do whatever the fuck they want. But I mean, for the smaller bands, Knocked Loose is a name that came up. It's like awesome because this will be really good crossover for them, even if, they only went over 10% of the non-heavy listening crowd at that festival. that's still 20,000 extra fans. It's like really, it's really a big deal for a band like that to get the opportunity. But as a spectator, like for me, part of festivals is also meeting people, not just seeing a bunch of bands. It's like, oh shit, like there's going to be 10,000 like-minded people in the same place. So I don't want to have to go to a festival with 100,000 people at it to find my 10,000. I'd rather go to more specialized festival and find my 10K. Like when I walk in the door and they're all
Right.
standing there like, hey, you're here. That's kind of like the vibe. Festivals are great for that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I definitely see where you two are coming from, because you've always been very well immersed within this heavier genre and world. And for me, I came from a place where it was a lot of indie rock and pop bands, and then I made my way. I've always loved metal, but made my way into this way heavier now. So for me, seeing bands at festival like that, it's kind of cool because I can see my electronic and then dance for a little bit, then see someone heavy and then see a pop art act, and kind of mingle my way throughout all of those different avenues and genres rather than just being set to one. So I think you have that other side of it too, where there are a lot of people who are dabblers within their everyday music. And you can see, I remember it was Coachella and I was able to see Lord one second, then New Order the next. And I thought, this is awesome, being like front row for New Order at Coachella. And then a second later, seeing another huge pop star, but way at the back. So I like the diversity in that sense. But you're right, when it does come to community, it's a little bit harder to relate to everybody if you are used to hanging around the same kind of crowds, for sure. Everyone's nodding.
The last time I went to Coachella, I cruised in right before Ice Cube and got a really great spot by myself, watched Ice Cube's entire set. And he brought out The Game, he brought out Dre, he brought out all these like amazing guests. And then Guns N' Roses, which I think was their third show back with Slash and Duff. It was like Ice Cube, all these amazing guests, GNR, and then I went home. And it was awesome.
That's all you needed, though, right? That was your fill.
All I needed that year.
Well, of course, we're talking about a bit of the crossover there, but as I mentioned earlier, a lot of other festivals too have been announced. Are there any in specific that really caught your eye that are heavier, where you'll be happy from start to finish? How about you, Downey?
I mean, I know it's going to sound like we're shilling, and in some ways we kind of got to get it out of the way anyway, but Knotfest Australia, which I know we've talked about on the show before, looks insane. Crazy. Knotfest Japan looks insane. And this, again, if whether or not we were shilling for knotfest.com or not, I would be talking about how those festivals look killer. I mean, obviously Slipknot, which is always an amazing live show. But Knotfest Australia also has Megadeth, Spirit Box, who I still have yet to see live, and I love that band. I mean, just knocking it out of the park with these Knotfest lineups. There's just no denying it.
D, how about you?
Yeah, there's like a bunch of really good fests I'm stoked on this year. I mean, we're talking about crossover. Like, it's not like there's no heavy festivals that don't cross into, other genres without having to get to the massive Coachella and Bonnaroo size. A big one for me that I'll do every single year without even seeing the lineup is Psycho Vegas. It's the only festival where you can see Jizza, Drab Majesty, Midnight, High on Fire, Danzig, and Merciful Fate. It's just kind of really covers everything from, rap and electronic all the way to raving till 4 a.m. and hanging in Vegas and then going to see goddamn King Diamond. It's like really, they cover it all. So I'm really stoked on that. I'll do that one every year, even before they announce the lineup. But in the underground, there's some really good ones this year. Hell's Heroes down in Houston happens in March. It's like Possessed is headlining this year with Tom G. Warrior doing 2 sets, doing a Hellhammer set and a Celtic Frost set. Violence, Razor, Pagan Altar, Hallis's first North American shows ever. Ross the Boss doing a Manowar set. And then, all the up-and-comers from more like the trad metal scene, the Haunt, Freeways, Visigoth, Fugitive, the list goes on. That one's like a 3-day one in Houston. That replacement for MDF has been announced, Hell in the Harbor. That's pretty cool. Happening same time-ish. It's happening in May. Cannibal Corpse, Napalm Death, High on Fire, Goat Horse, Phallic Carnage. Like pretty much everything heavy that matters right now. Another really good one. I'm actually playing this one. I'm stoked on it. I attended last year, playing this year. It's called the Carolina Chainsaw Massacre Fest. You guys will love it. It's a horror and metal crossover festival.
That's awesome.
So Possessed, Exciter, Incantation. It's actually organized by John from Incantation and his wife Yo-Yo. Gruesome, Cloak, Bat, Demiser, Massacre. So all these awesome heavy bands and some more like gore imagey bands. And then like a classic like Comic-Con style convention as well. So like people, actors from Evil Dead and the Chainsaw Massacre film series, and just people from that industry as well. So you get the photo op and there's like merchandising, and it's like a convention and a heavy metal concert broke out. So it's pretty cool. Stoked on that one. And then my big one for the year, like the big mainstream festival, has got to be Hellfest. I went for the first time last year. It's the only festival I've been to that actually feels like its own city. It's a permanent structure. So like, it's not just like installations that are put up for one weekend.
On Hellfest this year, right?
Yeah, dude. Like Maiden,
and
Kiss, Motley, Slipknot, Pantera, but also like they do. The cool thing about that is they do like the stages are all like there's your main stage, which is your biggest bands, but they've also got like the more like the hardcore and punk stage, and they've got more like rock and roll and stoner doom stage and the extreme metal stage. So like you get all those huge bands, but you also get Behemoth, Dark Angel, Meshuggah, but also Tenacious D, Rancid, and Sum 41. It's kind of like all bases covered, and it's like permanent installation. They don't just put it up for a weekend. It's like a heavy metal Disneyland. It has a Disney quality about it. Like everything's themed. The food is themed, and the buildings are themed. The retail is themed. It's all really cool.
I never realized how actually thematic the whole thing was until you just said that, because I've never been. But even when they announce the lineup every single time, I feel like it takes about 20 minutes to digest the whole thing because of how many acts are on there. It's ridiculous every time. We talked about it last year when they announced the 2022 lineup, but it's crazy.
It's insane. I had so much fun last year at Hellfest. It's like really not only just curated really well, like that element of like permanent installation. They've spent the time and money and there's so much care in the way it's designed. It's its own city. It really literally is its own city. It's very cool.
I want to go. And what was the name of the second fest that you mentioned, the like Comic-Con one, just to shed it out again?
So Carolina Chainsaw Massacre, and there's Hell in the Harbor, which is like the Maryland Death Fest kind of replacement fest, sort of. I don't know if they're want it to be branded that way, but it sure feels that way. It's in the same city around the same time with the same type of bands. And that first one in Houston is Hell's Heroes. Those are my big, like those are my musts. And then, the other ones fall into place, but those are my must sees or must play, whatever. I love those ones.
Right.
Yeah. Sorry, I was going to say, as far as the bigger festivals, the Euro festivals that you mentioned, obviously Hellfest, Download this year is Metallica, Slipknot, Bring Me, Ghost, Placebo. It's stacked, always stacked. And I've been to Download a couple of times, and it's always amazing. And of course, it's the site of the legendary Castle Donington and the old Donington Festival.
We're going to be hella busy this summer. That's intense. Oh my gosh. And then one that actually wasn't mentioned that really caught my attention, because I feel like I'm going to say when I go, because I just want to go that badly. But Sonic Temple is back after a few years away. And that one, too, just has the most ridiculous lineup in terms of those heavy hitters, one after another. Like on that one, there's Tool, Chevelle, Kiss, Foo Fighters were added to it, Deftones, and Rob Zombie. So it's a cool crossover, too, because you kind of have hardcore on one stage, heavy metal on the next, gloomy shoegaze on another one. And you can kind of end your night with these iconic, legendary rock status bands. And I think that's the cool thing about festivals too, is you really do kind of get your bang for your buck, because when are you going to be able to see people of those names one after another within the span of a weekend? So another shout out to them as well, because that one was fantastic too.
Yeah, that's sort of the successor festival, right, to Rock on the Range. I mean, it changed its name, ownership changed a little bit, but it's essentially the same thing, which is certainly, I mean, I think it's the biggest in terms of just straight rock. It's probably the biggest rock festival in America. And it's I think Beartooth is there, their home state. But yeah, the lineup for that is just nuts and crazy, and every Sirius XM Octane band is playing that show.
There's been like a change of the guard and kind of a passing of the torch with some of these like mid to larger American open airs, and because I wanted to plug like something that deals in more like 80s rock and hair metal, because there used to be like a couple good ones, but my go-to is like M3, which lineup's not sick enough to tell everyone to go to M3 this year. They're kind of like they've started booking the other versions of bands. Like instead of booking LA Guns, they're booking Riley's LA Guns, like shit like that. So
Yeah.
immediately, like that's just kind of out for me. It doesn't matter. You can, get Kicks to headline. I'd rather just watch Kicks like 14 times in a row if we can be real. But there's one that hasn't announced its lineup yet. It's been around forever, Rocklahoma in Pryor, Oklahoma.
Yes.
And it's the same kind of like circuit as a lot of that like Sonic Temple and Rock on the Range. Gets a lot of the same headliners, but every year they manage to also incorporate like a huge amount of like 80s hair metal. Like they'll have like your Sebastian Bach and Cinderella and Whitesnake and type stuff on there mixed in with everything else. And I'm holding out for that lineup because I need an American like hair metal festival this year because I don't think I'm going to do M3. So bring it on, Rocklahoma. I'm waiting for that lineup.
Give us the 80s, please. All of it.
Yes, please, all of it.
What about the cruises? Do you guys get into the cruises?
Fuck yeah.
I've never done a cruise ever, and I want my first one so badly to be a heavy metal cruise. So we'll see. But yeah, there have been some stellar ones that have been announced. I'm just kind of pulling some stuff up now as we talk. But
70,000 tons. 70,000 tons has almost their whole lineup announced as of now, which is hilarious because it leaves in a couple weeks. They're still announcing bands.
Damn.
But that one's rad for like metal, and then for more like hard rock and hair metal, the Monsters of Rock cruise is fucking stupid good. Like that's always a really good time. The people are great, the bands, the booking is amazing. That one's awesome. 70K is overwhelming. It's like they have 60 bands on that.
Wow.
60 bands in 4 days. The bands start at like 10 in the morning and go till like fucking 3 or 4 a.m. It's really crazy. That one's wild.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking right now. Sorry, go ahead.
I take like 2 weeks off if I'm going on a 1 week long cruise because it's a week of cruising and then a week of actually recovering.
Damn. No, even Shiprock is starting this weekend too. So just
I'm
from the
surprised
jump.
you're not already booked on Jericho's Rock and Wrestling Cruise.
Yeah, come on, Alicia.
One for you.
What's funny is I was actually going to text him just to see because I would really love to do that. The crossover would be beyond belief. So
Fozzy, of course, Quiet Riot, whatever the Quiet Riot lineup is right now. I think Johnny Kelly from Typo Negative is in Quiet Riot. Raven, there's a Kiss tribute band, and then of course there's all the wrestling aspect of that. I've only done one cruise, and oddly enough, it's funny because we're talking about festivals. Coachella did a cruise 1 year, and I went on the Coachella cruise. This was like, gosh, probably I think 2012. Okay. So yeah, over 10 years ago.
Who was running that?
It was the good news for me as an attendee was that not very many people attended. So it was really easy to like walk around and like you could wander the decks and not see anyone for a few minutes at a time. I mean, relative to what you would think, Coachella being the biggest music festival in the world. So, they only did it the 1 year, but I got to see Pulp, which was amazing. It's the only time I've seen
That's cool.
And Sleigh Bells was really rad.
Sleigh Bells know how to throw a crazy show. I remember seeing them in Toronto a few times, and as they were going into Real, it felt like the floor lifted into the middle eight. Like it was a baffling experience. They're so good.
This was that, but on a boat. So
you were literally feeling yourself
even crazier. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, and that was fun. It's interesting because a lot of those cruises, there's like just regular cruise people intermingled with the people that are there for like the event. I don't think that's always the case. I think sometimes the boat is just people at the metal show or whatever, but it's always really funny the juxtaposition of just like, regular grandpa and grandma.
And then this influx of just like black shirts coming your way.
Yeah. Well, I imagine. But yeah, oddly enough, the only one I've done wasn't a metal cruise, but I was there with metal dudes because Sleigh Bells is Derek from Poison the Well, and one of the other guys from Poison the Well was playing second guitar, and then Jeff the singer was there, and I was just there.
Just hanging.
My only cruise experience.
They're fun, man. I love that. I love it's the same reason I go to Psycho Vegas. It's like not just because of the amazing booking, it's the location. It's like you're on a floating 5-star hotel. It's fucking awesome. It's like, hey, we're docked today. You go like hang at Turks and Caicos for a couple hours and then hop on the boat and see Slayer. Like, I don't know. It's like pretty cool, right?
Yeah. That was crazy. This one started in Florida and went to the Bahamas and back. And I remember I remember figuring out this is how little I know about cruises. I'm like, why is it taking us 3 days to get to the Bahamas, but only a day to get back? Like, that's weird. And then, like, the ship's captain was like, well, because we're cruising there. Like, we're not trying to get there like as quickly as we can. We're
That's
cruising.
such a good point.
We
I've
can
never
get there in
thought-
half a day. We're taking
We're
3 days on
easing
purpose
in,
to get
but
Like any vehicle or
Matt.
vessel, it has multiple speeds.
Yeah.
Yeah,
who would
exactly.
have thought?
Yeah, weird.
Oh my gosh.
I guess I should be used to it because in LA, you can drive an hour and a half somewhere and then 20 minutes to get home. So kind of the same.
Life.
Yeah, I'm sure you're learning those lovely pains of it, aren't you?
Yeah, learning when not to go anywhere, and then would get, all right, we got a 2-hour window, get everything done right now. Yeah.
Yep.
Wild.
Yep.
We definitely ran over some of the awesome festivals that are on the horizon, but it's not only festivals that have been fantastic as of late, because songs and records are, of course, still being released into 2023. So I'd love to hear, what are some records or songs that you are loving at the moment? Dekay, take it away.
Last week on Friday, the new Screamer record dropped, and Screamer is like, first off, super good friends of mine, some of the sweetest human beings ever, known them for well over a decade. And this is their latest record, and it's by far their best. Traditional heavy metal, a lot of like rock and roll sensibility in the riffing, like traditional riffing. Really melodic, like all the time. There's tons of melody going on, harmonies on guitar leads and stuff. Big like soaring Dickinson-esque vocal, like really, really, really stellar band. And their new record's called Kingmaker, and that's Screamer from Sweden, and it just came out on Steamhammer on Friday, and it fucking rules.
Okay, and then how about you, Downey?
Radness. And I know we both always love learning about those bands from you, Dekay. Every time we do this, I'm like immediately like mental
Like,
note.
ooh.
Check
Yo,
that
you'll
out
love
as soon as
Screamer.
we get up.
Screamer's really good. Screamer's really good. Like everyone should really check out Screamer. It's a really good band.
Awesome. Well, one of my many favorite death metal turned melancholic, gloomy, doomy, poppy bands, Catatonia, has a new record coming out this week, and there are 3 songs from it out already. The first one is a single called Birds, and it's cool. It's chill.
It's cool.
It's nice and sad. I've been trying to get into the Villi Vallo record, and it hasn't grabbed me yet, but maybe it will. But I've been listening to that a little bit too.
That's something that always hurts my soul, when there's a release that you're really excited for, an artist you love, and then they do drop something and you're all over it, and it just takes a moment for you to really connect, or sometimes you just don't. Like, it's a little heartbreaking as a music fan.
Can be.
It can be.
What about you? What are you listening to?
Ooh, well, I know, and we're talking about this last night actually, and Dekay did a review of this album recently, which you guys should definitely check out. But I've been listening to Obituary, and I'm very excited to say, yeah, for the first time.
Not what I expected you to say at all.
I know.
No one expects it. People are shocked to open the channel and be like, oh, she's on Not Fast, so I get it. But no, honestly, I have been loving their new release. I was first listening to the single that they dropped, My Will to Live, and it's just a little earworm. Like, it hasn't left my head since I first heard it drop. It's crazy sludgy, really vicious growls. Then it kind of ventures off into this world of nostalgia, where it hits on a lot of 90s grunge with the distortion and the fuzz with the guitars, and then the entire time the riffs are just chugging and pounding away. Like, it's fantastic. So as someone who at first just loved metal and then eventually got into death metal and a lot of the heavier stuff like them, I love it. So I can't wait to venture, right? And I think too, because it's like
death metal, if it's going to be death for me or Obituary, and those are the kings. Sorry, Morbid Angel.
No,
sorry.
I love how there's an apology in there.
Yeah,
But yeah,
sure
it's
David
been really
Vincent's watching
cool.
us right now.
How dare you?
Yeah, and a little Knotfest plug. I semi-recently did a Disc Dive episode with Tardy Brothers from Obituary. The Disc Dive is where we take an artist and go through their entire discography album by album. So that should be rolling out on the Knotfest channels at some point in the very near future. It was a lot of fun. And I also caught up with Don Tardy, the drummer of the brotherly duo, again for my Metallica podcast, Speak and Destroy, which actually just that episode just dropped this week.
Fantastic.
And he's a few years older than me, so he was. You guys think I think I'm old school? He got Kill 'Em All when it was new, and so we talked all about just that early discovery, and as death metal was becoming a thing, and each of those Metallica records coming out, and how they sort of coincided with what they were doing, and so Obituary was forming and stuff, and really cool, really fun conversation.
I gotta check that one out. I love Don. He's not only just a sick musician, but any interviews he does, he's really fun. But I think the thing that's most exciting about this whole Obituary experience is listening to Alicia's enthusiasm in having just discovered Obituary in 2023, 11 albums in. Alicia, I need you to stop what you're doing right now. Yeah. It's incredible. I love it. You have to come over right now. We're listening to Slowly We Rot and Cause of Death, their first two records. You need to consume these immediately. You're on the Obituary train.
I'm getting goosebumps.
I literally have.
About
you're gonna love it.
To be able to hear Slowly We Rot for the first time again, it's like I remember when I first watched Twin Peaks, a friend of mine said to me like, "Oh, I wish I could see Twin Peaks for the first time again." It's like one of those things. It's like, no, you're blessed to get to be able to do that. And as we're talking about Obituary, literally right before we jumped on to tape this, I was just writing about Dying Fetus. So it's like they also are in that Obituary vein of like, it's death metal, it's aggressive, it's intense, but it swings. There's groove.
That's what I love about it. Like, I love something I can nod to and I can actually fully immerse myself in. And I haven't left anywhere and not just been like, like I can't get it out of my head. And that's the beauty of it. So as soon as I saw that, and of course I know that they have the crazy discography, I made a Spotify playlist instantly with everything from start to finish. And I'm deep diving tomorrow as soon as I start working. So yeah, I'm
and super fun music videos in recent years. I don't know if you've watched those, but
okay, cool.
Yeah, they have this great like animated videos with little storylines, and
it's a whole new world, and I'm happy to be here.
Whole new world.
They're truly the AC/DC of death metal. Like everything you said, Alicia, that you noticed about their sound. You mentioned the guitar tone, you mentioned the slow grooves, you mentioned all that shit. Like that's what they've been doing for 30 plus years. That's their whole thing, is that like, we're a death metal band. We've got the thick growl, the signature tardy growl, but we're known for like Trevor's thick, grindy, like instantly recognizable sludgy guitar tone and those slower mid-tempo riffs. And the Dawn is like dictates these grooves with the drums. Like,
so good.
That's them. That is the Obituary sound. And they nail it on this record. They just, dude, it's AC/DC. They are the AC/DC of death metal, the most consistent streak in death metal history, easily.
I think what I love so much about discovering it too is you hear of these bands for so long and you just don't have enough time to listen to everybody, especially because I do dabble amongst so many genres for so long. So then once you hear it and you listen and you just close your eyes, you're like, I get it. I understand. I know why you've been around for so long. I know why you've released so many records, and I know why I've heard you guys talk about them so much. So I'm here.
They fucking rule. They fucking rule. They rule. Now, 1990, Cause of Death, perfect album. Like just literally 10 out of 10. Like just insane.
That's the one you mentioned in your review, and I was taking notes.
Because it's their best album. It's insane. It's insane.
It was the weirdest timing, because I straight up was like listening to the new album. Then I saw on your socials you posted the review right after. I was like, great, this is what I'll choose for Knotfest. And then I was thinking to myself, let's see the
and then it'll probably
a
week or two there'll be a disc dive episode talking about each of those records that we're talking about.
I miss talking about music like that, so I might actually start something like that.
Yeah.
The bands the three of us could ever bond on, the three of us just bonded on Obituary. It's pretty funny. It's like it's not.
It's an amazing commonality right now.
It really is. It's so cool though, seeing so many people from completely different walks of life being able to bond over something like that you just wouldn't expect. So it is kind of cool.
Yeah, and you wouldn't think a band with that name or that imagery or those song titles at face value would be fun. But when I think of Obituary, I think of them as like fun death metal.
That's a really good point.
In the game too. All their songs, like I'm listening to the songs and I'm like, that's going to be a fucking hell of a mosh part. Like they're a really good live band. They bring like they just all nail their parts, and it grooves, it flows. Like a really really good live band. I just saw them most recently was on a Monomarth and Carcass tour. They were on that, and it was just like, yeah,
Wow.
they're so fucking good. They like even with like a 35-minute opening set, like they're just so fucking good.
Okay, I'm not leaving anymore this world. Like, not that I ever contemplated it ever, but I just keep discovering more and more shit that I just can't stop obsessing over. So, I love it. It makes me just so happy. Anyways, that's all, guys. Sadly, we're going out on a fantastic note, though. I've had so much fun catching up with you, too. I just want to say thank you to everybody who was watching Knotfest Heavy Conversations. Don't forget that you can subscribe to us and follow across all social medias at Knotfest and search up Knotfest Heavy Conversations on any podcast platform. On behalf of our fantastic hosts, Daniel Dekay and Ryan J. Downey, I've been Alicia Atout, and be sure to hit up knotfest.com for plenty more. We'll see you next time, everyone. Bye.
Stay tuned for our obituary cast starting next week.
Coming soon.